Hey everyone, Steve Schwartz here from LSAT Unplugged. I'm doing a special crossover collab video with Narinah from Just Narinah YouTube channel, who has recently made the switch from law school in person to law school online. And we'll also be talking about the LSAT-Flex and how that affects admissions as well. And so Narinah, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for agreeing to do this collab. I'm really interested to hear your experience transitioning from law school in person to law school online. Overall, what's your take on it?
So it's been different. I think, just as far as like your personality types, I think personality types matter a lot when you're like considering, online law school or in person. I think for me, I'm naturally an extrovert. So I like to interact with others. And I think you see how different the dynamic is as far as like not being able to just go into your professor's office hours and ask a question after class and having to wait until everybody logs out so you can have that one-on-one interaction with your professors. It really has been rough because, I personally don't like to study where I sleep. So I don't like to study in my bedroom. I would prefer to go to Starbucks or something like that. So it's been hard from that point of view, but I think it's been more relaxing overall stress-wise. It's not as stressful as, going to campus every day and dealing with the natural stresses of law school.
I hear you. That's a pretty balanced account of the pros and cons, but looking ahead to the fall, let's say, would you want fall law school to be online or in person?
I would want it to be in person, definitely. I don't think that law school, like just as far as our curriculum goes, I don't think it's best online simply because there's just so much information. And like I said, the benefit of being able to go to your professor right after class or having that one-on-one interaction with like study groups. I personally love my study group. And I just don't get that. I don't get that anymore. Obviously we can have our Zoom conference calls, but it's not the same as being able to, write on the dry erase board and talk things out with people in real time. So, yeah.
And what year are you in law school now?
I'm in my second year. I will
Year.
be a 3L next year.
Now, for those watching on my end, on my channel, they're law school applicants. They're about to start law school either this coming fall or maybe the following fall. And I always got the sense that 1L is incredibly important. That's a make or break time. It's also when a lot of social bonds form. So if you could put yourself in the shoes of an entering 1L this fall, would you even go if it was going to be online, or would you want to hold off and wait until you knew for sure, as sure as anybody can be, I guess, that it would be in person?
I like this quote. It's crisis breeds opportunity. So I think as a 1L, I would probably use this time and take advantage of going into law school, because naturally everyone adapts differently to certain situations. And I think that 1Ls can really take advantage of the curve if you work well under like a stressful environment, if that makes sense. And I think people don't, what makes 1L year so difficult is that a lot of people don't take advantage of the curve because they don't know what to expect. And I think with online law school, we all don't know what to expect. It's something brand new to all of us. Even if you had, family members who went to law school and could have given you advice, you still really don't know how that interaction is going to be through Zoom or online. So I don't know. I wouldn't discourage people from going in the fall. Just be prepared for it to be different. Yes, it's going to be harder to network and interact with your friends, but that's why you take advantage of other networking opportunities like 1L law firms. I know Ackerman Law Firm does like a December type Christmas event for 1Ls. Their networking events, Jones Day does those, Carlton Fields, and I took advantage of every single one of them. So you would be able to meet your classmates there and obviously potential employers.
Nice. I like it. So what I gather is that if you're entering 1L who is able to really budget their time well, maximize the opportunities in their schedule to get studying done and succeed, even if it's a remote situation, if you're set up better for success than your classmates, then you could still potentially do really well because law school grades are curved. And so if your classmates have family obligations or just can't budget their time appropriately or can't deal with the distractions of staying engaged when it's over a webinar or something or an online class, then you might do better.
Right. And you have to take into consideration like the grading scale. I know for us, I'm at UF Law and we've transitioned over to pass fail. So that's different. We usually have, letter grades, and that honestly takes off some of the stress of law school for some people. 1Ls are finding it kind of weird because they only have one semester of grades to apply to their jobs with. But I think employers are able to empathize with us and our current situation and what we're going through. So it actually gives us an advantage because we're seeing like big law firms reopen their application process. We're seeing firms just come together and really want students to apply and really want to be there for the students. So like I said, I think it's important to take advantage of these uncertain times.
And I would imagine that if firms don't have grades to go on or not as many grades, then the other factors may become more important, like how you interview, your people skills, your resume.
So yes, I think that would be super important. I know for me, I try to be as relatable as possible when I'm interviewing, and I noticed that works well. Firms just want to see that you're somebody that they can talk to on a daily basis. You're somebody that they can work with. I think that's extremely important for them. So yes, people skills, the ability to network, the ability to highlight your strengths, and even talk about your weaknesses in a way that makes you seem real and genuine and willing to work and grow with the firm.
Right. Now, law school starting online in the fall specifically, do you think that for 1Ls, do you think it'll still be pass fail? Have you heard anything about what that'll be like for the entering class?
So we haven't heard anything about what it'll be like at UF Law. I think that's something that they're probably discussing or probably waiting to see, if we're still going to be in, quarantine next fall. So I think they're holding off. But I would imagine if we are still in this state, I would imagine it would still be pass fail, simply because, like I said, some people are really stressed out and some people, aren't. It's just a fair way to cover the bases as far as how do you monitor cheating from home? There's no way to monitor certain things. So pass fail is the only way to make it as fair across the board as possible.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Cheating in law school when classes are remote. How do they monitor it? Because I imagine that you're taking exams and everything you would ordinarily do in law school right now. So what are they doing? I've heard that law school exams are typically open book anyway. So would it be more like someone else is doing the work for you? How do they account for that?
So I think they can't account for that, which is why they've chosen to do this pass fail grading system. I know Exemplify, the software system that we use to actually take our exams on, it can shut down the internet if your professor, wants that. But obviously we all have cell phones, we have tablets, we have the internet at our fingertips at all times. So they just don't know. And honestly, when it comes to cheating, you really have to, it's hard because you have to take into account that you're studying or you're being tested on what your professor taught you. Obviously, they didn't teach you every single thing that covers criminal procedure or every single thing that covers, corporations. So you still have to take into account the things that you were taught, and you can't go out of those boundaries. But yeah, like I said, you can't really monitor that. So it's best to just stay in the pass fail grading system. So everybody gets a fair grade. We don't have S+, which is the highest pass fail. We don't have that. It's just passed or failed.
Right. Pretty simple. This might be a good transition to discuss the LSAT side of things because that's moved online too, and the question of cheating there. And obviously the LSAT can't be a pass fail exam. It's always been on a scale of 120 to 180. And there needs to be separations all along that continuum because of law schools' rankings, raising their medians, having a sense of how strong someone is as an applicant. And they're using a different system called ProctorU, where they monitor and record everybody with a webcam and microphone, and the software shuts down all other programs. And like with law school, even if it were open book, that might not help too much anyway, because what can you do? There's not a lot to memorize. It's more just your method of reasoning and your ability to engage in deductive reasoning, critical analysis, and things of that nature. So that's how they've chosen to handle it. And the GRE and the GMAT have gone the same route, actually. Back when you took it, it was in person, 5 sections, paper and pencil, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was different. It was, you had to sit there, you had to concentrate, read through a booklet. I mean, I can imagine, like, I can't sit and stare at a screen all day, especially when you're taking an exam as difficult as the LSAT. So I wouldn't have wanted to do it that way. But yeah, I'm pretty old school now, I guess. I was the last class to take it in person.
Yeah. Well, they just went digital on tablet this past July, just as a general way to update things for the 21st century, but people were still going in person to take it. But recently, due to COVID, the GRE and GMAT went at home. The LSAT followed pretty quickly because they've got to innovate too. Law schools need applicants, so they moved everything online. So far, the LSAT-Flex is only in North America, but I expect they'll expand it internationally if this situation continues, because they've got to let everybody take the LSAT one way or another, and law schools need applicants too.
Right.
But a really interesting thing about the LSAT-Flex is that they actually made it shorter for the online format. So it's 3 sections, not 5. That's another big change from when you did it.
It's funny because I always tell people the LSAT is not determinative of how well you would do in law school. I think a lot of people put a lot of stress on themselves and importance on the LSAT, and it is important as far as like rankings for schools, like they take that into account. But I don't want to say it's not necessary, but it's not determinative of how well you do in law school and your ability to be like an amazing attorney in the future. So some of these changes, it's hard to tell whether or not like they matter really in the long run. I would say they don't, but don't quote me.
Well, I think you make a good point, which is that your LSAT score does not define you. And it certainly says not that much about how you'll be as an attorney. Like we were saying, when you remove some of the numbers earlier, like you remove grades, the people skills, the interviewing, your resume, your real world experiences and accomplishments matter much more. And there are objective ways to analyze that as well, quite clearly. The LSAT skills do relate quite a bit to what you do in law school specifically, but how you do on a single standardized test that's largely, entirely, at least the scored portion, is multiple choice, versus an exam that requires reading and writing and analysis. Those are quite different skills, of course. The LSAT has an unscored writing section that matters much less than the numbers. And I think that if they had a good way to critique people's writing ability on the LSAT writing sample and assign a numerical value to it the way they do on the SAT, for example, I think that would be great. And they just don't do it because they don't want to deal with having to grade thousands and thousands of essays.
Right. And, well, the way we write in law school is completely different from any writing that I had ever done in undergrad. I was an English major, so that's all I did was write. So I feel like it would be hard to really know as a law school admissions rep, like based on somebody's writing sample, what they would be able to do in law school, because you're gonna change. You're really gonna try to get them out of that mindset and into like the law legalese type, straight to the point, concise type of writing. So that's why I think they're being a little bit more lenient on like the writing portion, because it's not, I don't know, it's not really helpful in law school, like your old ways of writing.
Yeah, I always hear professors saying how they have to reteach everybody how to write. Like first, you get to college, throw out what you learned or did not learn in high school. You get to law school, throw out what you learned prior there also. That's totally true. And I think most students are not that well equipped to handle the writing, even on the LSAT. And it simply indicates whether you're fluent in English and whether you can put a sentence together. But beyond that, I think folks don't spend a lot of time on it but it may become a little bit more important now that the LSAT writing is typed on a computer online rather than handwritten, which hardly anybody could read.
Right. Yeah. I would say you're right.
No, I mean, I think that with time, maybe it'll become scored. If it's online and it's typed, maybe LSAC will, if they get requests from law schools especially, they'll put some more work into actually grading those writing samples and giving them a bit more importance. I think the only barrier to that is really logistical right now.
Yeah, I think schools just should take into account other factors. Obviously, writing is important, reading, analysis, yeah, all of that is important. But students are like facing test anxiety, stress, especially because we put so much weight on these standardized tests. So there's really, like I said, no way to determine how one would do in law school based on these random, well, not random, but based on these standardized tests.
I mean, not an ideal system, but at the same time,
not at all.
When we look at what could law schools do to evaluate applicants, I don't ever come across any perfect solutions. Grades, there's grade inflation in different colleges, and the extent to which there's grade inflation varies between colleges and then between majors. So there's no one objective standard, aside from exams like the LSAT or the GRE.
Right. There isn't. And that's why it's like going back to your overall package and really taking on that holistic approach of when it comes to admitting applicants, what does their personal statement look like, their diversity statement, their resume, their letters of recommendations, what have they done outside of the classroom, and really taking all of that into account. I think that matters more when assessing like a prospective law student and their capabilities than really any standardized test. Because I feel like when somebody's passionate about something, they'll work hard and they're going to do well. And I think law school is just one of those programs where if you work hard, you will reap the rewards of, being a hard worker. And I'm not going to say like everybody in law school works hard. I mean, if you got into law school, you're pretty much somebody who works hard and studies. But it just comes down to that curve and knowing how to, I don't want to say play the system, but life is like a game and you really have to know how to be a playing member or whether or not you're going to be on the bench. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure. And I think that what you said about the holistic approach is really important. I think a lot of law schools claim to use a holistic approach because it sounds nice, but they are largely rankings driven, which means that they're numbers driven. And with time, if their rankings could diminish in importance as students recognize the value of other criteria other than what the US News rankings emphasize, then law schools could also take more of a holistic approach, looking at the personal statement, letters of rec, interactions with the admissions office that has that human element to it. So students who come across well and are polite and well-spoken and they negotiate properly instead of trying to play hardball, right? Like that sort of thing matters a lot. And especially when it comes to things like getting off the wait list. But if you can apply that from the beginning, I think that could make a huge difference. And sometimes that makes actually the difference, even with the numbers having as much importance as they currently do.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think we agree on that.
Awesome. Well, I think this is as good a place to stop as any, Narinah, but this has been a real pleasure connecting with you. And for folks watching on my end, do you want to just share a little bit about your channel and where they could go to find out more about what you share there?
Yeah, so my @ name is @justnarinah, JUSTNARINAH on YouTube and on Instagram. I use my platforms to really discuss like my personal experiences throughout my law school journey and where I'm going. I hope to, really inspire others, to really push others to do their best and really take that leap of faith when they're deciding to apply to law school or if they're unsure about law school. And so, yeah, you can follow me on social media and ask me any questions. Feel free to reach out. I'm here to help if I can in any way that I can. So thank you for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Narinah. Thanks for having the conversation. And for those watching on your end, folks can find me, Steve Schwartz, over at the LSAT blog, as well as the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast, as well as the Instagram and Facebook community. And we'll trade links and share everyone's information so folks can reach out to us as well.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, have a good one, Narinah. Thanks.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.